Good morning, fellas. And here we are again after a week break. Bill, it's always good to see your face on the Zoom and welcome home after the summer away. And
Yes.
let's dive into it. We're in the Gospel of John, which you are fully aware. Today we'll look at verses 34 through 36, and this section has to do with the formal Roman trial of Jesus interacting with Pilate. And I must say that there is a lot of controversy in when it comes to biblical scholarship points of view. Um, I think we're all aware that Jesus or that each gospel writer had their perspective on presenting the gospel, the story of Jesus from their particular reasoning, what they wanted to get across. And John is no exception. It's the latest gospel. But within John's gospel, Pilate is depicted as quite a different kind of character. And I'm fully aware of that. And rather than doing a deep dive and trying to parse out, well, let's kind of go with this and this, I have chosen throughout the entire gospel to present it as I'm reading it. And so, there may be degrees of inaccuracy of what Pilate was really like, but I am trying to be true to the interaction that's taking place within the gospel because I think there's lessons for us. So just bear with me with that, and you might come up, well, in Luke, it kind of depicts Pilate like this. Yes, I'm aware of that. Maybe not of the particulars, but my attempt is to try to present what John, to the best of my ability, to what John is trying to present as his gospel account. So anyway, that's a big disclaimer. Let's move in. The theme this morning, or the title, is not of this realm, because Jesus is going to make allusion to that statement, exact statement once, and then an allusion to that same idea a second time. The text is 1834 through 36, and it's coming off the heels of 1833, where Pilate comes into the praetorium and says to Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And 34 picks up with Jesus answered, "Are you saying this on your own, or did others tell you about me?" And then Pilate answered and he says, "I'm not a Jew, am I? Your own nation and the chief priests handed you over to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would be fighting so that I would not be handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not of this realm." There's where I get the title. So let's move into this. Today, we're looking at this. Jesus responds to Pilate by clarifying that his kingdom is not of this realm, and we're gonna look at that. And then, secondly, Pilate is engaged, listening, and responding. This is the rub. This is where I take a position, along with other people, the minority of interpreters. But I think Pilate, I think Jesus, I think Pilate is captured by Jesus. I don't think he's being dismissive or let's get through this as quickly as possible. I think Jesus gains his attention. Now, that's my particular bent and view. Not everyone shares that, but it's how I'm looking at it is because I think it reads like that. So in verse 34, I've got it titled, Please Clarify. Jesus answered, Are you saying this on your own, or did others tell you about me? And this is so in sync with the person of Jesus. When Jesus is asked a question, he often, and you guys are very familiar with this, he often returns that question with a question. And this is no different. And in every case, it's to help the other person, from my perspective, clarify their own understanding. So following Pilate's question, are you the king of the Jews? Jesus asks him for clarification. His reasoning is intended to help Pilate understand his own understanding regarding Jesus. Again, fellas, that's my perspective. Jesus does not prejudge Pilate's motive. His question to Pilate is in correlation to how Jesus interacts with everyone. Jesus is in a tight fix here, definitely. He is fully aware of what is about to occur. He's fully aware of the person of Pilate and his position and what's at stake here. That is the position I take, but Jesus is not white knuckling it, which is a mystery in itself. But I think he's reaching out to Pilate. Now that would be a statement that would be considered naive in some positions, and I'm aware of that, and I'll take that. Jesus always communicates towards inviting the other. I'm tying his interaction in with Pilate in how I perceive Jesus throughout the gospel account. And I think this is a true statement regarding how Jesus communicates. Jesus never wastes words from my perspective, and his words are always for the benefit of the other. He talks about this in verse 37b, which we'll get to next week, where he states, Everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice. Now, this could give you an understanding what I'm going to say next into how I'm thinking about this. That's kind of an archaic, or not archaic, but a enigmatic statement, a mystery. What is he talking about? And I think our heads generally naturally go to what I'm going to say next. And I'm going to give a clarification of how I think he's talking. So this is my thought on that statement. Everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice. And this goes back to innies and outies, Bill. Jesus, in my opinion, I think it from the text, does not think in terms of categorizing other people, whoever he's talking with, as either in or out. That is very much part of our general upbringing in the faith. There are in people and there are out people. And I don't think Jesus thinks like that. Rather, at any given moment within any conversation, the question is the other that Jesus is chatting with hearing at that moment what Jesus is inviting the other into? In other words, I don't believe in a categorizing people as having prayed a prayer like we've been much of our upbringing, and that just puts them categorically into a different relationship. I don't think that's in Jesus's mind, nor throughout the gospel. I think it's at the moment. At that particular moment, that juncture, is the person hearing what Jesus is inviting them into. If the other is hearing, then at that moment, they are of the truth. That's how I understand what Jesus is saying. They are of the truth, which means engaging at that moment with what is real. Jesus is 100% about truth, and truth is that which actually exists versus what we humans tend to create in our heads. Of that moment, of the truth, that which is real. And being of the truth leads to life. So that is a slow-mo of this interaction here with Jesus. I think Jesus is inviting Pilate, just like he's done numerous times, into truth, invitation into what is actually real versus the construct that you and I as humans create in our heads. So Jesus counters with John's God, or excuse me, I'm kind of supporting this idea with this slide. And what this is a review, quick, we're going to do this really quick, how Jesus encounters other people within John's gospel account, and it's right in sync with how we see Jesus interacting with Pilate. So that's my point. Jesus treats those outside the Jewish faith, the outsiders, with the same dignity, compassion, and invitation as those within the faith community, the insiders. So we're dealing with outsiders and insiders. Pilate is definitely an outsider, and I'm supporting my notion here. As we look back, I'm not going to go through all of these, but here are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 accounts within the gospel that are in correlation to Jesus's interaction with Pilate, the last one here, John 18:19, of how Jesus treats people. Jesus treats people as people. There are no rightists or leftists. There are no Republicans or Democrats. They are people. They are human beings. And Jesus treats people as human beings created in the image of God. And you can look at this. It'll be posted tomorrow. So you can look at this and my comments regarding these people are all outsiders, and Jesus is treating them as human beings. So Pilate responds in verse 35. Pilate answered, "I'm not a Jew, am I?" He says, "Your own nation and the chief priests who are supposed to be in charge here handed you over to me. What have you done?" That's Pilate's response. Now, number one, I think Pilate, even though there's good evidence he lost his job, he was replaced because of his cruelty. And I'm aware of that. But Pilate first, I think he was qualified, or he wouldn't have been in this position. He knows what it's like to be in a place of judge. And he first states what he does not know, and which is his limitations. He is asking, and from my perspective, clarification. He doesn't know the Jewish community. He claims that. I'm not a Jew, am I? So he's right out front claiming what he doesn't know. And I think that is a first step towards discernment and wisdom, is that as we understand our own limitations, we can then engage in a productive manner forward. But if I'm just stuck in my own biases and my way of thinking, I'll never move forward. I'm stuck. This is a response from my position from a person who is well qualified to sit in the seat of judgment. He's done this before. This is not new. He knows that he does not know, and he needs clarification to know. And that's what is behind this statement. He then moves to what he does know. What he knows is that the very people who are supposed to be part of Jesus's tribe, his own community, are the ones condemning him. He does know that. And Pilate wants to know from Jesus what Jesus has to say about this. That's what Pilate knows. Pilate then responds like anyone who is in this place of judgment, sitting, the judge on the stand. What have you done? Why are these people so upset at you? You've obviously done something to offend them. That's what Pilate knows. And from my, again, perspective, which is not in correlation with a lot of commentators, they cast Pilate as very dismissive, very cruel, and just wanting to get through this. And I take a counterpoint. I think there is actually engagement to some degree here, to some degree. Jesus responds with the two realms statement. Verse 36, Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not of this world." Statement one. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would be fighting so that I would not be handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not of this world. Now I'm going to comment on that because I think they're actually in dialogue. So this is what Jesus is in essence saying. This conversation is taking place on this planet Earth within the Middle East on a little strip of land at the east end of the Mediterranean called Palestine. And it's actually taking place on a physical planet, the Earth. The circle or the oval represents what will become the Roman Empire, roughly. And so in Pilate's mind, he's thinking geography, he's thinking territory, he's thinking rule over a segment of this physical world. And Jesus immediately dials into where Pilate's head is at, and where this conversation is taking place is in solid earth within the city of Jerusalem, which is part of the Roman Empire at that time. And this is the realm this is all Pilate knows. He doesn't know anything else. He knows this. He who carries the biggest stick wins. That's Pilate's perspective. And he wants to keep the peace so that he is not criticized by his superiors for not keeping the peace. Just keep it calm and we'll grow the empire. That is where Pilate's head exists. After establishing this basis of geographical location as a basis, Jesus then moves on to clarify that this is not what we're talking about. He doesn't expect Pilate to know what he's talking about when he says not of this world, but he's saying, Pilate, we're talking about something different. He calls it two things: not of this world, or this geographic reality, and he then says not of this realm. He uses two terms to emphasize that they're not, they need, we got apples and oranges going on here. And then he reinforces his notion, not of this world and not of this realm, by stating what would be true if it were of this realm. Because in this realm, the world that Pilate knows, if you have a beef against someone, you get a bigger stick, you get a gun, you get a sword, you fight back for your position on this geographic turf. And Jesus is very clear that this is not happening. These guys are not about what Rome is interested in. And so they're not in demonstration in resisting the Roman rule. Now, this would have been very different from the other messiahs who have come through the system in recent history. I have not done any extensive research in it, but I think it's generally true that the prior confessed messiahs were out to counter Rome's rule so that they could have their land back, and they used force in that rule. It was about conquering the Roman rule. This same idea was very much informing the minds of the disciples during this time. It's all about, let's get rid of the Roman rule and let's let God be the king and get our land back. Jesus is clearly saying we're not talking about that. That is totally off the realm, although Pilate does not engage at this point with, well, what do you mean? I want to believe, I think Jesus is attempting to communicate to Pilate to just make the suggestion, if nothing else. They don't get in a philosophical discussion. I understand that. But Jesus's method of communication is for information and engagement, not dismissal. Jesus is talking to Pilate in the language he can understand. Jesus is communicating that his kingdom is no threat to the empire, the Roman Empire. His kingdom is not about territorial advancement and occupation. I think that's the essence of verse 36. So we're just going to leave it at there, and we're going to talk about this idea, that the idea being of engagement, there is some level of dialogue going on, not just dismissal on the part of either Jesus or Pilate. And Jesus is talking about a realm that exists outside of Pilate's jurisdiction, his mindset. And Jesus proves his point that it's a different realm through the inactivity of the disciples to try to defend their turf and capture more turf so that they can counter the Roman Empire. So Jesus makes it clear, and we're going to enter into our table time with this idea. Jesus makes it clear, from my perspective, that his kingdom is no threat to Roman concerns. I think that would be true of all the gospel accounts. The reason is because his kingdom is of a different realm. There's no explanation of that realm, but it's of a different realm that has nothing to do with Roman concerns. Now, here's the rub, and here's where we can engage in conversation. However, we fast forward, not in the immediate context after the incarnation, but as not long after that, throughout church history, there have been numerous folks. And folks, this is, guys, this is where we're living right now, even this past week. Throughout church history, there have been demonstrations of this kingdom, not of this realm, the kingdom that Jesus is talking about, acting like the kingdom of this realm. You see what I'm saying? The kingdom of this realm, of not of this realm, acts like the kingdom of this realm. Where Christianity, the message of Jesus, is weaponized to advance its concerns. I think this is not all of church history, but a good chunk of church history. So, in a graphic depiction of what I just said, the cross, this, becomes this. It's about the cross becomes strong arming, it becomes winning. It becomes overcoming. It becomes a fight over turf. I think it would really be hard to deny that reality given what little we all know about church history, but especially with the concerns of today. And I think an interesting discussion for us to engage in, first of all, it's clear, I'm going to make my point, it's clear from the text that Jesus is not supporting the idea of weaponizing. You know, there's this idea that we will speak love until it doesn't work, and then we'll go to something else, you know, plan B, which is weaponizing. And I want to propose to you guys, I don't think Jesus is there at all. At all. And what's reflective within much of our Christian context is really not reflective at all of what Jesus is speaking. Now we turn it into it, oftentimes through biblical verses. Well, we always have biblical support to support our own constructs. But I'm saying it is off his map. And I would like to propose, I'd like to create a discussion or set the table here. Why, assuming you can recognize this, you know, you may not agree. It would really be hard to disagree with church history and the weaponizing of faith for its concerns. But anyway, discuss why and how you personally think well-intentioned people, us, we're all us, we turn the cross into the strong arm. I think we would all love to hear what you observe, what you have observed, what you have experienced on both sides. I know what it's like to be on both sides of this, where I, in a very self-righteous way, can strong arm to get my way in a doctrinal sense. And I know what it's the sting of what it's like to be inundated with criticism and labeled labeled in a derogatory way as someone who is not engaged with the person we all love, Jesus Christ. So I would like you guys, what happens to us as people? Why do we do this? Well intentioned, loving, concerning people who turn the message into a weapon. What is it, guys, in your minds? And how have you experienced it? Bill, how did I know your hand would go up first? You gotta unmute.
I just want a slight clarification before we begin. I know this is affected from N.T. Wright, but my NIV Bible says in that last verse, it says, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jewish leaders. But now my kingdom is from another place." And Wright made the point that of and from are interchangeable, and that's important because a lot of people say of this world. Well, that's when you go to heaven. No, it's not from this world. It's from someone else, but it's for this world. So his kingdom is for this world, and that really pops up in the Lord's Prayer when they said, "Thy will be done," because Jesus, like when he went to Gethsemane, he had a plan. I think he had a plan, but he said, "Okay, Lord, not my will. I'll do it your way." So doing it God's way and taking it from another realm are one and the same thing, and that should be our motivation.
Okay, can I got a portion of that, and forgive me, it's my ears. I think what you're pointing to is a different twist on the translation, which is going back to the biblical or the original languages, and it said it can be cast just a little bit different, and the difference is rather than a dismissal, this world and that world, that his kingdom is to be of this world. Is that what you were saying?
It's to be, it's from another world, but it's for this world,
Yeah, for this world. Yeah.
right? This is how you're supposed to live.
All right. Well, good. Thanks, Bill, for opening up. Maybe other guys have comments on that. So I guess we have to think, well, do we buy into the fact that this is a human tendency within the believing community? And if so, why? Why do we, and I'd like to keep it from us and they, why do we as people tend to do this?
Well, this is a disqualifier here. It says, if my kingdom from this world, my servants would fight. Well, if the servants are starting to fight, it's not the kingdom that he's talking about.
No, that's a demonstration of the kingdom of this world, of Pilate's world,
Right.
not of what, that's why it's of a different realm. I
Well,
mean,
and
that's
I
what he's
think, Mike,
saying.
that some of the things. Are you hearing me, Mike?
Yep. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Okay. Um, some of the issue, I guess, with this weaponizing is that we're told in Scripture that we're in a spiritual battle, and we realize from what's going on in this world that a lot of what is happening in the spiritual realm is um, oozing over, for lack of a better word, into in that the ideas propagated contrary to what Scripture says is right, um, are from a different realm as well. They are from, a lot of the lies come from Satan, from a different realm. So we're caught kind of trying to battle this spiritual battle, which then becomes, unfortunately, sometimes a battle within this physical world, trying to counter what I've said before in the past is the world calling good evil and evil good. So we tend to kind of put our dukes up when we find ourselves in a let's say an argument about what is right and what is wrong within this world. lot of that stems from what is being brought in as lies from a different realm. If you understand what I'm saying?
Let me feedback. Yeah, and that's really okay. What I think you're saying, Jeff, is that we people, and you're moving towards that question, well, how do we do this? Well, we've got biblical texts, especially in the epistles, Paul's language of the spiritual battle. We fight not against flesh and blood, but against this, principalities and powers and so forth. And somehow, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but this is how I'm interpreting it. Somehow we use it as our biblical basis, and it kind of indirectly gives us permission to then move from that spiritual, whatever Paul is talking about in that realm, the devil, good and evil, the fight, and so forth, and turn that into an AK-47 to be exercised within our realm. Is that what you're saying?
Well, kind of, sort of. What happens, I think, to me especially, is that when I'm um, trying to, in my mind and spirit, let's say a particular lifestyle that I don't agree with, that I think is
Yeah.
ungodly, go past the point where I am saying that lifestyle is wrong to the person. You are wrong. You are, and it becomes a battle within this realm when the spiritual battle itself is what is right and what is wrong.
Yeah.
I take it too far as an imperfect human being and I say, you are wrong. You are obviously evil. You are,
Yeah.
doing something so that's the you asked, how does it get there? How do we well-intentioned people turn the message of the cross, which is salvation, into one where you're going to hell? It becomes weaponized in our approach to how we're arguing about what is right and wrong.
Okay, you give a really good descriptor there and a very common scenario to all of us. Why do you think, and I'm not putting you on the spot, Jeff, but this is to you and to any of us, why do we tend to do that? Why do we have to label and impose a judgment on another person in a certain, why do we need to do, why does that happen?
Well, and I think for me it is, through scripture and through um, my walk with Christ, I am aware of what is right. I'm also aware of the fact that I missed that too many times myself, but I also see that um, being missed in other people's lives, and part of what we're called to do is to bring people to Christ so that the end result of whatever life they're living becomes eternal life, not eternal death. We just finished a study in Revelation, and it talks about the lake of fire and the new Jerusalem and those kind of things. And I think there's a motivation within most of us that is, especially within family or friends, when we see uh, that is leading toward a a bad outcome, I guess, for lack of a better word, with if their life continues down the road it's going. And so we tend to try to fight to that against that. But our problem is that then becomes a fight with that person, not
Yeah.
against whatever is causing them uh, to take a wrong path, I guess.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we kind of put you on the hot spot there, Jeff. Not meaning, but thanks for your. Bill's got his hand up, then I think John's got a comment. So
Well, um, we're afraid of if things don't go on our schedule, we got to force the issue.
I think
I
so.
mean, I keep thinking at the end of the one chapter, and I think it's Peter's walking away with Jesus, and John Mark's back there, and Peter goes, "What about him?" And Jesus goes, "That's not your concern. Follow me." Well, that's kind of harsh, but it sort of said, "Focus on me, and I'll take care of that." And there's in this, if the schedule isn't progressing like we should, then we've got to up the amperage. We got to force the issue, and instead of persuasion, we become coercive, and that's where we lose the battle.
So you're saying there's a propensity, generally speaking, to force the issue.
If yeah, it's not working on our schedule, what do we do? Well, let's gather our forces and force the issue doesn't mean put a gun to someone's head, but it could be a lot of political pressure, it could be social pressure, it could be public pressure, it could be a lot of things. But we've got to make this work. It's important. This has got to happen. And
If that's the case, and
yeah,
off record, I would tend to agree, then whose need is driving that decision? Who
our
need
need for validation.
our need? It's something I need.
Yeah.
Now we'll cast it in I'm defending God's truth, but it's really my perception, and it's really my own need to bring calm so I can feel better about me.
Well, we all want to be what I was saying, an evangelist like Paul was. But there's a lot of places in Scripture where it says just live a life worthy of the Lord. And if someone asks you why you're doing that, that's an open door for you to talk about it.
Yeah.
It's a very much more passive approach for some people. Everyone has a different calling, but don't try to be something you're not.
Well, that would be really good. John, what are you're
Yeah, just
bouncing in your seat. What do you got to say?
um, let's say I'm a Democrat, and Mike, let's say you're a Republican.
That's never it was the case, but not anymore. But anyway.
Well, let's say you're a Democrat and I'm a Republican. You getting the idea here? Right. So when I'm with you, and let's say each of us are strong in our beliefs, when I'm with you, you make me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
The rest of the guys think like me. So when I'm with them, right, then I'm okay. We
Right.
we tend to find people tend to find their identity in their belief and their belief system. And today, a lot of people find their identity in their politics. So what we drift into, let's say Bob's a good Presbyterian and Jeff's a Baptist, and Jeff has been talking. He says, "You've got to be water baptized, man, or you're not in." Right. And Carl, he's a charismatic, and he's saying, "You guys are missing the boat." Right. And we tend to drift to our groups,
Yep.
our belief systems, our traditions, and people in the next tradition make us nervous. We feel good if we're around the people that kind of think like us,
Right.
right? And my identity and all's copacetic. And to talk to somebody outside of that, right? So Jesus shows up and he says, "My kingdom's not of this world." Now it's crazy because Jesus says, "My kingdom is of this world." And then he'll say, "My kingdom is within you," right? And so it's all these different things. Thy kingdom come, right? The kingdom of God is at hand. How do we pray? We'll pray like this: "My kingdom come, as it is in earth, on heaven." Like, well, these two can't be. It's got to be one or the other. This idea of a realm or a spiritual realm, we tend to go to our camp and then we live there and then find our security there. And then that's our comfort level. And I think Jesus all along is talking about something else.
That's a really good statement, John. Thank you very much. And I think it is so true. Bill said prior, we need validation. So we tend to create stories in our own head that validate our own stories. We then find community, our tribe, that will reinforce that kind of thinking. And so we have it from the community and we have it from our own thinking, this reinforcement that just keeps going round and round. And it severs talking with anyone different than ourselves. You made a really good point, John, that I hadn't really thought of. Jesus talks about the kingdom in numerous ways. The recipients at the time, primarily we're talking about the the believing community during the time of the incarnation. They understood kingdom as one way, and that was a Messiah that would come and deliver them in strong arm, Rome out of position, and that God could win. One way. And I think that is so true living in the 21st century. We tend to reinforce our own thinking and we tend to be reinforced by our own tribe for our own comfort. So I
I
can
think,
feel good about myself.
yeah, absolutely. I think Jesus is calling us beyond our tribe. There can be life inside the Presbyterian, all these different traditions I was saying.
Yeah,
Inside of all those, it's not like they're wrong.
right.
It's like they take a piece of truth, hold on to it like it's the only truth. And Jesus is saying, I'm the way. He's saying, I want this relationship with you.
Yeah,
I want to restore your relationship with God.
yeah,
And, and it's back to Jesus. It's not just believing in Jesus so we have the right belief system.
yeah,
There's more to it. There's life. And he's talking about truth, and you're talking about realms, right? And Jesus says, my kingdom is not of this world. Right? And
right,
yeah.
right.
which which doesn't go against what N.T. Wright's saying to Bill,
No,
saying, well, I guess that means then I don't do the Good Samaritan thing, or I don't love my neighbor, or I don't love strangers. Absolutely not,
right.
right? But
Absolutely not. Yeah,
he's saying beyond this, what is life all about? He's saying, I hope one of these days you old guys finally get this picture of what it's all about.
yeah,
It's interesting. It's interesting. As I age, and we always have this arguments, orthodoxy and orthopraxy, but I don't think I can find many people who think like I think because my thinking keeps changing. As soon as I find them, I'm going to find myself out of connection. But I can sure come across a lot of people who might want to do what I want to do, whether it's work at the mission or help with the farm doing deeds of kindness and treating people kindly. I find that defines, I want that tribe.
yeah. I think what you're saying, Bill, is that if you look at orthodoxy belief and you look at orthopraxy, it's really hard to find anyone that will line up 100% with your belief system. And I
Right.
think that's true of everybody. But with orthopraxy, it's hard to argue with an act of kindness towards another person in need. Yeah.
Well, and Mike, one thing that Bill said earlier was that, God gives us opportunity. So it says, be ready to basically tell somebody about the hope that's in you.
Yeah.
But what's he say after that? He says with gentleness and reverence. So he doesn't say don't tell people about the cross. Don't
No.
have discussions about what you believe and what your hope is, but be real careful how you do it so that you are not. Because if I attack somebody, what's their response? Their response is to put their dukes up and defend themselves. But if I can do it in a way that just stimulates thought, then we are able to bring the message of the cross without having to kind of, like you said, bully or, force somebody to our way of thinking. We simply give them an opportunity for their heart and their mind to go toward the cross and uh, not say, oh, I have to agree with Jeff, like John was saying. There are a lot of things that people aren't going to agree with me about, but hope that at some point they agree that the source of life and truth is through Christ, you know. And if I can do it in a way that doesn't make somebody defensive, that's, I think, what we're trying to get at here.
Yeah, I think so too. Yep. I just had a thought, Jeff, while you were talking, and my frame of reference, or let me rewind. I think it's common, and for years, I wouldn't say I could articulate this, but I can now. I looked at the cross event, the passion, this entire when Jesus and the disciples left the upper room, the trial at Caiaphas, the trial at Pilate, um, the judgment, the crucifixion at the cross, all of the passion narrative. I looked at it from the perspective of that God is veiled, and at the end God is going to, it's like the Superman perspective where Jesus is like Clark Kent, and at the end he's going to win. He's going to resurrect from the dead and win. I just don't go there anymore. I think during the passion, Jesus, the incarnation, is revealing right now at this very moment, revealing the extent of what God is like towards humanity. And that has really put a different perspective for me on how I view this. So um, it's, he could have called 10,000 angels, there's the old hymn, but he doesn't. And there's a reason he doesn't, not because he's being hindered, but because he's revealing to us at this very moment who and what God is like in human flesh. And I think there's volumes here to learn from. And of course, it depicts what does it mean to be his follower. So anyway, that was a kind of a tirade there. Sorry. What other thoughts, fellas?
So I think, don't we want everybody to join our camp, our tradition, right? So if my conversations with other people is only to get them to believe the same thing I believe, then we're only halfway there. Do you remember, maybe back in the 60s or 70s, there used to be a saying like, who you are speaks so loudly, I can't hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right.
That's good.
And Jesus is saying, I'm trying to get to the heart. Jeff, when Jesus talked to a lot of the Pharisees, man, he offended them big time. He got in their face, right? Not
Right.
everybody, he wasn't like milquetoast going around and saying, oh, you nice little lamb, you're really nice. I mean, sometimes he did. And to the people outside the camp, he was really gracious and compassionate. But to other people, man, he hit them head on, right? And so the end game isn't that you would be in my same belief system, although good doctrine is better than bad doctrine, right?
Agreed.
Good belief system is better than whatever. The point is, we want to take all 100 things I believe and make them like fact, 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 when in fact, probably only the core of it is really, what should I say, important.
Mhm.
But the end game, is that Jesus came that people could get connected, could get redeemed, could get restored in their relationship with God. And if we try to live life outside of that kingdom, right, we're missing the boat. And God doesn't throw all of us out because, one's a Baptist and one's Presbyterian. He kind of says, he who has ears, let him hear. I hope you guys get this picture. It's not just about what you believe. It's not just about orthodoxy.
Yeah.
But I go a step further. It's not also just about orthopraxy. There's something more than the two of those.
Yeah. Boy, that is, my heart is just pounding because that is so engaging to me. That's exciting.
Yep. It was interesting that he saved his wrath for the people who were misrepresenting God. And a lot of those were the Pharisees with the strong arm, or I wish they had the strong arm.
Yeah. The guys,
Yeah.
the people who are supposed to be in the know.
Yeah.
Um, what's driving that, John, that idea, and it drives me, is a belief. I mean, at the 30,000-foot view, where is this whole thing going?
Right.
And from my perspective, it's about restoration. God's judgment has to do with restoration, a restoring. And that is from a 30,000. So I have hope that that's where it's going. I don't know all the details right now, but I certainly want to keep that out there as my target. Is this a restorative action, or is this a judgmental retribution action of judgment? And I really land on the side of restoration. I think that is the God that I understand God to be. So anyway, good thought, really good thoughts, guys. Discussion.
Yeah, we still have a couple. We still have a couple minutes. How about somebody else? Bob, what are you thinking?
Steve or Carl, Totsi, yeah, we'd love to hear from you guys. Thanks, John.
Yeah, I just have one question.
Yeah,
I just have one question. Mike, how did you get an opportunity to take a picture of my arm?
Well, I did it. We were together last week, Bob, and I took a picture of your arm while you were laying sprawled out on the couch one afternoon with a big
Yeah.
drool. You had a big drool down the side of your mouth,
Yeah.
pouring away. So I thought at least I can capture some aspect of you.
Good discussion.
Yeah, really, really good.
Steve, I know you'll say something. Come on.
Is that John?
I know you'll say something. I know your brain's going around, or Carl, but
Kind. It does go around sometimes. And it's really too late, but I think we could do another half hour on this and take it beyond the realm of and this has been very effective, don't get me wrong, but beyond the realm of sort of denominational lines and beliefs, sort of doctrinally speaking to sort of the present political, cultural, social mix that we are in right now, particularly in terms of the why. And I'll just say, I think part of the why is there's a lot of fear in our culture right now, particularly after a week like we've just sort of witnessed here in terms of the national scene and shootings and so on. Anyway, I'm late to the meal here. I realize it's 8 o'clock, but obviously, Mike, your question hits on a lot of different levels.
Man, I guess. And this last week is just, there's a lot of heartache and pain and fear, as you said. I couldn't agree more. I think everyone here would agree with it. Fear drives a great deal of this. So
everybody has their guard up.
Really true.
What we intend is talk of love. Everybody's turning it into hate speech.
Yeah, exactly. Well, fellas, thank you for that engagement. Yes, it was a really good discussion, and not that we solve anything, but hopefully in our minds, we can move the puck a little bit forward towards the message of Jesus and how we understand that. So I'm going to be around for a while, so we'll engage next week with the next session. And guys, again, I can't thank you enough for your participation in that discussion. We're all better because of our time. So thank you all very much. Have a good week, and we'll see you next time.
Glad you're back, Bill.
yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool to have you, Bill.